Hello, everyone. Welcome to the We Heart America show with Dawn and Ella. And every week we take you on a compelling and thrilling journey featuring American legends, unsung heroes, and esteemed celebrities every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and noon Pacific here on True Frequency Radio. Myself and my fellow co-host, best-selling author Donald Jeffries, will showcase incredible stories from fascinating people, get the inside scoop from the most intriguing people on the planet. And today we have one of those fascinating people. Her name is Sarah Westall. She is a successful entrepreneur and business executive. In the past 25 years, she has created and developed multiple companies, including a successful management and consulting firm and a multi-million-dollar international import and manufacturing company. She has a dynamic leadership career spent building high-performance teams in highly competitive industries. She has an entrepreneurial attitude, energy, and style. And most of all, she is known for her podcast where she covers corruption, interviews whistleblowers, and we are lucky enough to have her right here with us. And we have lots to talk about, including the fact that she has been blackballed basically from social media. So Sarah, I just want to say thank you for the interview, and hi Donald.
Hi, thanks for joining us, Sarah. Sarah and I go back a ways. Usually we're reversing roles here because Sarah's had me on her great podcast many times. And
yes,
I was so sad to hear, I called it the Great Purge that happened. And I don't think it's an accident that, it took place a few weeks before the election because I think they were worried about a lot of the interviews that might have been on from you and SGT Report and Red Pill, all these Dustin emails, all shows that I used to go on regularly. And that you guys would have been having big videos out there, a lot to talk about with all the electoral fiasco going on. So sad to see that, but I know you're going to persevere and you're still out there. So tell us how that happened. They just gave you a message, and did you realize that you were one of 20 some people that it was like the last purge of, people that, might blow the whistle on what was going to happen here?
Well, it became pretty obvious pretty quick, that we were all taken down at the same time. But I got to tell you, I just put out a video a few days ago, and it's well over 500,000 views so far because I did it on
Wow.
This is absolute proof that Donald Trump won. And I recommend everybody to watch it because there's voter transactional data that computer scientists and other mathematicians went and analyzed, and it's 100% proof that these votes were switched. And it's just the states that are the most important, Arizona and Georgia and Pennsylvania, they know that those votes switched. Enough of the votes were switched it back to Trump.
Well, where did you get 500,000 votes? That didn't go back to YouTube. Where did you get that many views?
I think as of this morning, I had like 400,000 on Odyssey. I have like 55,000 on BitChute, and I have a little backup channel that has like 3,000 YouTube followers right now, but that has over 50,000 views on it. And then my podcast is almost 10,000 views. I mean, it's just all over the place, and people are really sharing it. So it's going viral. So I just put it up a few days ago, and I'm so glad because you can't, you got the ballot issues, you got all these other issues, but you can't argue with hard facts and hard data. This is hard data. And it's, it proves 100% that he won with the hard data. And there is more votes that are out there that this can't prove. I mean, there's more fraud than this. I mean, he won by a landslide, but for what we can prove, it proves it. And so what it does is it tells the world that this media is lying. I mean, everybody knows it in their gut. I mean, when we watched it, we woke up at 4 a.m. and watched the steal. But this is absolute hard proof. So, yeah. So now if we can get back to, I had to talk about it because it's so important.
No, yeah. Well, that's great that it's getting so many views. So give us, especially like Ella. Ella's, she's probably a little more skeptical than we are, although she's great. Where you don't really know her views a lot of times. She's very impartial. But so what would you say is give us a few nuggets from this video that what absolute proof that you think?
Well, it's the voter transactional data. So basically, they were watching the actual feeds of the votes come in, and they were watching votes being subtracted from Trump and added to Biden. And so basically, it's like a bank ledger, when you're watching the delete and you're watching the ads, and it's just the voting data that they got from the actual feeds. And I have the sources, and I show the changes, the total changes. So it's without a doubt. And it's over, in Pennsylvania, they lost 800,000 votes, and there's 200,000 votes that were switched. In Arizona, there was more than the number that he lost by was switched from Trump to Biden in the transactional data. And so you just have to look through it, and you can see it's 100% validated, and it's so solid. It's like a bank ledger. It's the actual data. So you can't lie about it. And so the media is saying there's absolutely no proof, and they're just full of crap. They're lying. And the scary part is they're going with these false agendas. I'm worried about the World Economic Forum and this COVID. I also have another documentary that has about 50,000 views. That's about the World Economic Forum and how they use COVID starting back in end of May. They had this whole COVID thing that's like 200 levels deep of how they're going to do this great reset based on COVID. And they had it all there since the end of May, maybe before, I don't know. That's when the researchers, Grace Van Berkom, I was using a lot of her work, and then I created a documentary off of it. That's when she went in and did it. And all the way down to the detail, how we're going to live. I mean, this is a complete control takeover of the world. They want the bankers, they've talked about it, the central bankers at Jackson Hole, Wyoming, when they do their meetings, they want to do a reset. They want to take over government's budgets. And I mean, this is right out of their speeches. They want to control the budgets of world governments, of the governments of the world, and not let the people have any say, tell you where you're going to spend your money, tell you what you're going to eat, tell you what calories you're going to have. I mean, it's all in there exactly. They want to control you down to the very detail. And it's really scary. And they're going to do it on carbon, how big is your carbon footprint, which is all BS anyways. Of course, we know there's pollution. We know that there's problems in our environment. Animals are being killed, but it's not due to carbon. It's due to other issues. And if there's too much carbon, you plant some trees. I mean, carbon is food for plants. So anyways, they are using this, and they say there's quotes from all these people. Even if it's not true, we have to tell them it's true, because that's how we're going to use to control to control the economies. I mean, I got all these quotes and everything else. That's what I'm concerned about, and that's what Joe Biden represents. And whether you like Trump or not, he is pushing back against that massive agenda, this isn't Democrat, Republican at all. I mean, a normal Democrat would absolutely hate this. This isn't a Democrat, Republican question. This is whether you want some other outside force that has no business telling you what to do to take over this country and to tell you what to do. And that's what they're pushing back on. And that's what the majority of the people are very, very ignorant about. And if they just knew the truth, they would be pushing back hard. But they just don't know the truth. That's what's so sad. And I did the documentary, and all of it's 100% fact, with their quotes, their websites, their information. It's not stuff I made up. And it's the same with this voting data. It's all factual stuff. But people need to be aware of it. And our mass media is so bad. They're so bad that people are really dumbed down. We see it with what's going on right now. They are claiming there's absolutely no voting fraud, no evidence of voting fraud. Well, that's a total lie. Even if you are 100% you're for Biden, you have to admit there's dead people that vote. There was, even at the very minimal level, there's voting fraud, So that's a complete lie. I mean, they're pushing back too hard, so they're exposing their hand. But when you look at the voter transactional data, it's really obvious. I mean, because it's hard data. It's like a bank ledger. So, people just need to be educated. They're being hit. The truth of what's going on is being hidden from them. And that's why we are not making logical, rational decisions on things things just don't make sense, because there's a lot of fear. People aren't that bright anyways. They don't have the right information. And then they get them fearful, and then they're really making irrational decisions. And now we're sitting in this just very frustrating situation for those of us who do a lot of research and are on top of issues as much as we can be. It's very difficult because we're facing this wall of ignorance that we're trying to educate. And it's hard. It's like Plato's cave where you're staring at the shadow and you should be staring at the light. And if you stare at the light, you get scared and you fight like heck to keep staring at the shadow. That's the philosophy of this situation. So I can keep rambling if you want.
No, Ella, I was waiting for Ella to come in. Ella, you have a question?
Okay, sure. I was just waiting. So this is, one's a comment and one's a question. Well, it seems to me that despite the censorship that has been placed on you, you're still getting the views and you're still able to get your content out there. And I'm just glad to hear that that's happening, even though, YouTube is probably the number one platform out there for information, and it seems like you beat it.
Well, I think that I still lost a lot. And I think that what we're learning is that YouTube was censoring us more than we realized. We think we had a lot more views than they're giving us credit for. And I also think because there's been so much publicity that new people are finding us. But I had over 125,000 followers, and I don't have anywhere near that now, if you count up my followers. So I think they were just censoring and lying about how many people were really watching my videos. Because Don used to come on, and you can validate this for me, but you used to come on and you used to sell a lot of books when you came on my show. But the number of views did not warrant the number of books that you sold, in my opinion.
Right.
And so I think I had a lot more views than what they were telling me.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I'm certain that your videos weren't filtering properly. Like, how they always give you suggested videos that are tied into the videos you were just previously watching. I've seen that happen as well. And why do you think this purge started, in your opinion?
Well, I think it was a big operation to convince people that Biden won, that he legitimately won. I think it's the same thing tied into the polls. They were all lying. And I was warning people ahead of this time. I said, I think they're doing this as a massive psyop to convince people that when they steal this election, that it was real. And they shut us all down 3 weeks before the election. They were shutting people down and taking off videos the day before the election if they were controversial, like anything about the voter, the software, any of the, because General McInerney came on, Dave Janda's show talking about the scorecard software that changes the votes and how this is a major issue, the Dominion software that's a major issue. All those videos were taken down. Twitter wasn't allowing any of the Biden Ukraine information or China information come out, which I've been covering a lot of that before, not necessarily with Biden, with Hunter Biden, but with other things that are going on in Ukraine and China. This stuff is all real. This is happening. And they were shutting that down because they don't want any of that information going out. The big tech companies were they wanted to win this, and they were putting all the stops out. Now, Twitter and Google were used by the CIA and other countries to control their social media and to sway elections and do these things. The CIA tools that were used in other countries essentially have been turned on the American people. That is a fact. And I've been covering this for years. And, I just did a show with it yesterday on the fact that the CIA tools, the Hammer scorecard, has been turned on the American people. ShadowNet, which is there's a whole cottage industry of generals that have taken proprietary CIA tools that were used as weapons of war against other countries and weapons of defense to defend us in other countries. They have turned around. They have taken that proprietary software, they have privatized it and turned it into their own companies and then sold it to clients here in the United States. And so that's what we're seeing now being used against us. I think it's both private and government entities, but most of it is private and ex-military people and people tied to this global cabal of bankers and really bad guys who are using it against our country because they want to destroy the United States. period. They want to take us down because we are in the way. We are free thinkers. We are more entrepreneurial, and they can't have that. They want people who are more communist. They want this communist ideal. They want people to think like communists because they're very controllable. They want to have this completely top-down controlled society. They do not want freedom. They want no freedom. They want to control every bit of you. That's different than, a populist agenda. I know, Don, you were always more left-leaning. This has nothing to do with what traditional left-right was about. Nothing to do with
exactly. And that's why I'm not welcome on this left, because they don't, the ACLU, if they were still doing what they used to do, people forget the ACLU as recently as the 70s, led by a Jewish lawyer.
That's my dad's high school friend and college roommate.
That's right. You're the one. Yes. What was his name?
Oh my God, Sarah. Berger. That's terrible that I can't remember him right now.
We need to give the guy we need to give him credit, because I asked you about trying to get him on my show.
Yeah, we did. Yes.
That guy's incredible.
I'm getting older.
Well, this is a guy who was Jewish. He had to be personally repulsed by actual Nazis.
His mother, his whole family rejected him. He told us the story because my son did a history report on him, and they won all these history awards. Yes, he lost his whole family when
that's the essence of being a civil libertarian, which is what I am. You have to, even something like that, where they're really repelled by people that want to march, but he fought for their right to do it in a heavily Jewish area, Skokie, Illinois. That's what the ACLU used to be and what civil liberties used to mean. But that is long gone. Now, if they attempted to do that, probably everybody that attempted to do it would be fired from their jobs. Certainly no lawyer. You probably couldn't even get a KKK lawyer to defend him. I don't know.
Let's give him credit. It's David Goldberger. He was his name. I'm so sorry. He's my dad's friend, long-term friend.
That guy's a profile of encouragement. He represents what used to be there. Now on the left, the only people I can commiserate with left are Cynthia McKinney, Cindy Sheehan, who's very good. Naomi Wolf is very good. She just wrote tagged me on Twitter about why isn't the ACLU getting involved with the violations of the Fourth Amendment and First Left going on with the lockdown. And but so there are people out there like that, but they don't have much of a platform, and they're just drowned out by this crazy woke left.
Well, and see, that's what I would say. Well, I always thought I was kind of in the middle because I align with a lot of those thoughts, but I tend to be a little bit more conservative sometimes in my own views. But I'm more like you in a lot of ways. But that I'm an extremist right person now, apparently, according to this woke left. I'm like, that's not really what I am. But I guess I am. I don't care, I guess, because I don't agree with any of this crap. This is wrong. I just had Kay Rubachek, who she directed a movie called Finding Courage. It's a family in China that was in the Chinese concentration camps. They were the Falun Gong practitioners, and it was about their story and how they were put into these camps, and they finally escaped from China, but they're still putting people into camps. They're doing the Muslim Uyghurs as well now, and they interviewed a couple dozen former and current Chinese government officials, and we're trying to get our head wrapped around how these people think, and it's like they call them the walking dead, because they have to separate their humanity from the decisions that are made, because the way they treat people is inhumane. It's party before people, and free speech. None of this stuff is freedom. They don't have the ability to think for themselves. These people are ruthlessly persecuted. They can't have a religion. There's no freedom of religion. The reason they didn't like the Falun Gong people is because they saw them as a religion. It was starting to take over, and it wasn't a religion. It was just a way of life. They're very healthy, but they thought that it was taking power away from the party, and so they persecuted them. It's an incredible story of this family, but what's even more incredible are the quotes and the information from these officials. It's very sad, but they were saying that there's more familiarity between the what they say happened in Russia and other communist countries than their own culture, because the Chinese culture was very different than this. They had to leave their own culture. They had to drop their entire culture to be part of this Chinese party. And that's why they call them the Walking Dead, because it's not, we are our culture. We don't want to get rid of who we are and the essence of who we are. And these people were forced to. I mean, they have more in common with the other communists around the world than they do with their own culture. And that kills them, you know. And then the way they had to persecute their own people for things that made no sense. And she talks about all these different things they did. It's incredible. And we're seeing that here, you know, with COVID. It's like, what is going on here? 10 times more people dying from the mandates than from COVID. And you're making us do all this stuff. Meanwhile, you're not protecting the very vulnerable, these elderly, because in Minnesota, where I live, 80% of the people died in nursing homes. But we have these hardcore lockdowns. Like, what are you doing? I was like screaming in April, these people are dying. You're sending these people to the nursing homes who are sick. You're not protecting the elderly, but you have us in hardcore lockdowns. I mean, what is wrong with you?
I know we had something occur like that here in the Northwest. Just so many people passed away in these retirement homes. It was just it was devastating. It really was. And this is kind of going off topic a little bit, but I'm just very curious how you went from this successful business person and then became a podcast host.
Well, and I don't even know if I call it podcast because I'm in so many different, I guess it's all podcasts now.
We'll just say multi-platform reporter. Yeah.
And I was actually out of New York in, what do you call it? Long Island, New York. That's where I was started, and also in Seattle. And then I just decided this is just not the format I want. I wanted to be broader, and I wanted to reach more people and not spend, because it's, you know, setting up at first, it costs money and the way it all works. And so I did it this way. But, you know, my podcast on Apple is ranked in dozens of countries on Apple Business. And what happened is that I started running into all these inventions, because I was doing the edge of business, the edge of change, you know, business game changers. I wanted to talk about, you know, I was really into science. That's my background. I loved how the world is changing. And I started running into all these inventions that would change our world. And then I started realizing these people are being shut down. And then I started realizing what was really happening, you know, with the blackmail and the fact that we are being humanity is being purposely kept in a box when we can solve so many problems. And then I started learning what was going on. And then once you learn, you can't unlearn. The next thing you know, there I go.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, this is more important.
Yeah. So that was kind of the moment that you woke up, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, that, and, you know, I started waking up with 9/11 and then my own experience and then 2008, you started waking up when you realized 9/11, I started really diving into it about 6 years later. I wasn't one of those real aware people. Maybe I wasn't all that bright back then, but I started waking up I was so busy with my own business. You know, my business was taking off. And I think that's so much of the problem is so many people are so preoccupied with their own stuff. They haven't stopped just to become aware, but then you're forced to, you're forced to through some kind of experience. But I was, there's multiple levels here. Once I started realizing what was really going on in the world, it's a kind of a trauma. You go through a trauma. And then I interviewed somebody whose dad was, finding children for these people in black capes and stuff. And then and for his dad happened to be, it was ritual sacrifice and stuff. And he happened to be procuring people for the Democrat Party. This was back in the 70s. And, you know, the Republicans are doing it too, but happened to be his dad was finding people for the Democrat Party. And remember when the WikiLeaks email came out and Obama said there was going to be children in the hot tub and they said their ages for your entertainment. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what happened at these parties. They would have children there for the people's entertainment and people would stay after. It would be these big fundraisers. People would stay after and use the children. And he explained it, and he just explained so much, and it was like an hour and a half. It was so traumatizing for me what he explained. You know, like the 9-year-olds were the ones with more experience helping the 6 and 7-year-olds get through the trauma of the situation, that kind of stuff. And he was saying a lot of these kids, the only reason he made it out alive is because his dad was actually the one getting the kids. And so he kept them alive. But so many kids would be so brutalized during the process, and this was going on. It's a big blackmail system. And so I learned that was the currency of the powerful, is this big blackmail system.
Mm-hmm.
And so they use blackmail to control all these people. And then I learned that these people are in this Luciferian cult at the very top. And they have this whole system they put in place to control people. We just happen to be in a situation where we could see a cult coming into power. And I mean, you got to think of it that way. It is that this cult of weirdos, I call them cult of weirdos, but they believe in Satan and Lucifer. They are in power, and they don't have the morals and ethics that others do. So they figured out how to use blackmail and everything else to control everybody, and they have power. That's why we're kept in a box. It's so out there. It's
the conspiracy horses have left the barn. We got to go to break here. We'll be right back with Sarah Westall. Welcome back to We Heart America with Don and Ella. Our special guest is the lovely Sarah Westall, who has been banned from YouTube, but is coming back with a vengeance with 500,000 views of her new video on other platforms. And hopefully, we all talk about in the conspiracy world, we all talk about whether it's BitChute or now the new social media is Parler. Sarah, are you on Parler? Because I got an account there and I can't figure out what to do there. It seems very confusing to me. Are you?
I am, but I don't know. I like Twitter because I like how it's used, but it's such a joke. I mean, as far as I've had people tell me all the time that they're being unsubscribed, and like, okay, well, whatever, and they're resubscribing. So it is a joke that way. And I know Parler people are joining. But you're right, it's hard. I also want to reach people who aren't reached. I don't want to be in an echo chamber, but I do think it's really important that we get off those control. I mean, Twitter's a CIA tool in other countries, for God's sake. So we don't want to just be there where they're shutting down our voice.
Well, the fact that they can. We're living through times I never thought I'd see. I don't know what to make of this election thing, but the fact they can censor Donald Trump himself, the president of the United States, is amazing. But what do you think? What I'm telling everybody is that I've never seen anything like that. I've been in this, the conspiracy biz for longer than you have, but and I have never seen a major television network. Now, Fox News is not this way at any other time other than the three primetime guys. Tucker Carlson, especially, and then Hannity and Laura Ingraham. But ever since this election, controversy arose, they have been covering things that no network has ever gone before, because it's basically a giant conspiracy theory what we're proposing. That's what they usually would dismiss it as. They are treating it. They are very sympathetic to it. I mean, Hannity's on there with the CIA lapel pin. And he's very sympathetic. They're bringing witnesses on. They're bringing the postal workers, the poll workers. They're talking about the.
It's too obvious.
Right, but I mean, I never thought I would see it. And here you have the president of the United States. So I don't think they can sweep this one under the rug like 9/11 and JFK and everything else, because you do have millions of people that are watching it on Fox News, and you have probably almost all of the 70 million people that voted for Trump believe it was rigged.
Well, Well. They played their cards too much. We went to bed, they shut down the counting, we woke up, and suddenly everything changed at 4 a.m. Mm-hmm. It was too obvious, and it was too obvious in front of the world. And so now and that's how I started my little documentary thing, or little video I did. I said, when you watch an election, when you steal an election in an obscenely obvious way in front of the world, what happens? Well, you get the world's smartest computer software and engineers figuring out what the hell happened and sharing it with the world. And then that's how I introduced the video, and I started talking about what they came up with. And that's the case. I mean, you have a lot of really smart people going, this is BS. And I'm going to find out what happened. Let's get the transactional data. Let's save it, because we don't trust anybody. and we're going to analyze it, and we're going to show you what happened. And let me see the code from these Dominion software, because there's a million people out there can read code. We'll tell you what happened, because this is BS, and we don't believe you, media, because you're lying to us. It's too obvious.
You know, even some very well-known whistleblowers, NSA whistleblowers of all things, are going on shows and podcasts and talking about, Bill Binney. You might be familiar with him.
Yeah, I've interviewed him multiple times. Yeah, and Kirk Wiebe. I love those guys.
Well,
they're saying the same thing.
Going on some shows. Yeah, they're saying exactly the same thing, and they understand code. They understand technology, especially Bill.
Absolutely.
That was, he was a high-level NSA
well,
employee.
They both were. Yeah, Kirk Wiebe worked with them. I mean, I have a degree in computer science. That's what I did at US. So I led the whole networking software group for, there's an army of people. It's not, honestly, this kind of software isn't rocket science. In the realm of software, it's more at a basic level. And I'm not kidding you, just tabulating voting data. And so you can just see what, it's just adding and subtracting for one person or the other. That's not complicated software. And so you have millions of people who can figure it out and go, wait a minute. And then you have even smarter people that can get to the transactional data, save it, analyze it after the fact, and say what the hell's going on, because they're a little more astute in the world too. And so they've just played their hands too much. It's too obvious. And now you have the media lying to people when it's just too. I've even had Democrats go, wait a minute, guys, not all these people are crazy. There's something going on here. There's more of them are scratching their heads too. More of them are looking at the World Economic Forum and my little documentary and things like that, going, well, wait a minute. What's this COVID? Why are we 10 times more people dying from the mandates than for COVID? Why can't people work? They can't even freaking feed their family. What the hell is wrong with you guys? There's more and more people going, oh, wait a minute. Something doesn't seem right.
Well, so, do you think Trump had, what do you see happening with the election? Do you think, I don't have very much trust in our courts, including the Supreme Court, I might add. I'm sure you're aware of this, but the Pennsylvania Supreme Court opened the door to massive fraud when they said if a mail-in ballot is not postmarked, we're just going to assume it got in before the election day, which is, that opens the door to widespread fraud. And it took it to the U.S. Supreme Court, and Amy Coney Barrett recused herself, which allowed it to continue. So do you have confidence that she would vote the right way if it went to the Supreme Court?
You asked me a big question. I think if it went to an honest court, this whole thing would be changed around and Trump will win, because I see the data. And I know that the Arizona person who's in charge of that, she's deep state all the way, totally bought in, crazy. You got people like, I don't know all the people, but the Lori Lightfoot types, where you were talking about the hypocrisy, and I just tweeted to you today. She's out there doing this huge Biden rally for the win. She doesn't have a mask on. There's all these people smashed together, no social distancing. And then 2 days later, or a couple days later, she says, oh, we got to crack down because of COVID. People shouldn't do Thanksgiving and do all these things. It's like, you're such a hypocrite. Okay, so you got those type of people all over the place. That is the concern, right? It needs to bump up to the Supreme Court. I do think the Supreme Court is better. And if the proof gets in front of the American people, I think, Trump won in a landslide. The proof gets in front of the American people, the people will do the right thing. But that's not what's up. When there's a coup, when there's a bad guys trying to take over this country, trying to destroy this country, they don't care about what the Americans think. They don't care if the court is truthful or honest or right. These guys, like I said, they are this weird cult who's at the very top. I know that's out there. I just got done talking about how that seems like a weirdo conspiracy theory, but I'm telling you, I've had too many people from all different walks of life, totally unrelated, giving me facts that has proven to me that this is true. And it's taken me years for me to be able to get over my hurdle of admitting that it could possibly be true. But they don't care about honesty and truth. And so That's the concern. Are they going to be able to blackmail these people? Are they going to have enough control to be able, where the Supreme Court is going to say country over my own ass and my own blackmail, or not? I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So besides the people and the topics we've covered, what are some other forms of corruption that are most important to be aware of, our listeners?
Well, I mean, the swamp is deep. And one thing that I learned just about 6 months ago, I did his name is Dr. Sarhan, I believe was his name. And I did an interview with him, and he talked about the trillions being stolen from the elderly and put into guardianships, and then they steal their assets. So people need to be very careful about their elderly loved ones, because they've been watching their parents get stolen from them and their assets being ripped from them underneath their noses. They put him into guardianship, won't let you. This guy's a doctor, a medical doctor, and he couldn't even take care of his mother, and watch his mother assets get stolen. And then she was given, I don't remember what kind of drug, but essentially killed after they had all her assets. And there's a documentary that was done out of Las Vegas, where it's very well done, talked about this as well. I don't remember the name of it, but there is also books done on it, and there was congressional reports done on it. There's a lot of evidence proving that this is true. Trillions of dollars stolen from assets of people with decent amount of retirement, or money that they wanted to pass on to their families, and it was stolen. People need to be very careful with their loved ones and what they do with that money. And even putting it into, if a loved one is getting elderly, maybe you put it into their children's names beforehand, or a trust that their children can manage or something. You just got to be very careful, because these people are predators. That corruption is very real. There's also, go ahead.
No, I said now, especially with the horrible, tragic situation of the elderly already being, having
Exactly.
shoddy care in nursing homes, already having uncaring kids and grandkids that don't visit them often enough. Now they can't have anybody visit them. So who knows how many old people have died because of COVID, not of COVID.
Oh,
but
a lot
because
more.
Of it. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's terrible.
And that doesn't make what you're talking about, that makes it that much easier, because they're isolated and they're easy. I mean, anything could be going on with the old people in these nursing homes. The families, they can't visit them. So what they don't know, they could be signing things. They could be doing anything at this point.
If you love your mom and dad, take them out of that damn nursing home and care for them if you can.
Yes.
Hire a private nurse or whatever you can. Just get them out of there. That's what I would do.
I was going to say the same thing. Mm-hmm. Hire a private nurse. And because some of it's very embarrassing. We had some of our family living with us, and, changing their Depends and things like that, and showering them. That can be a strange scenario. But yeah, just hire a private nurse.
Yeah, just get them out of there, because they're not safe.
Mm-hmm.
A private nurse will be cheaper than what you're paying in the nursing homes.
Exactly.
You're paying like $6,000-$8,000 a month or something for a decent nurse.
And they're like padding everything.
Yeah.
They're like, they take such advantage of people.
Oh,
and
yes.
That's something I've read a lot. I read extensive reports on that topic, and it's jaw-dropping.
Yeah, it's really sad. And then the other thing is the Child Protective Services. There was, I just had Dwight Mitchell on a couple months ago, and he is actually fighting at the Supreme Court. He's the only one that's ever won against Child Protective Services in court, which is crazy. But he has saved his organization. It's a family preservation organization. They have saved over 500 kids so far. And he says, I'm just getting started. And I love this guy. And they saved him from the system. And basically what they've done is they've changed the laws that if they don't have to prove abuse, mental or physical abuse, they just have to say that they're neglected. And 86%. Yeah, 86% of children are taken out of homes because they claim of neglect. And neglect could be as simple as the family's poor, so they don't have the same resources that somebody who has more money has. And so they're spending $1,000 a month ripping these kids out of their homes and putting them in foster care. And instead of that, why don't you give them a little more resources so that they can afford to not be neglectful, because these are loving families. And so these poor people are losing their children. But what they did is the good old Clintons, changed the system so that they were funding every step of the process so that more kids would go into child protective services. I say they doubled the supply of trafficking children they could traffic, because they doubled the amount of kids since in the last 20 years in the child protective services.
Right.
Yeah,
They doubled
I
them.
have a lot of inside information about this. I've been a foster parent and I've adopted kids. It is really tough between neglect and poverty to kind of make that line, that clear line in between, because my kids were considered neglected, but they were left at home, left in dangerous situations,
Sure.
and weren't getting fed. So it is tough. That really is a tough thing. But in Oregon, I mean, it's got to be really bad, lots of reports, and it takes years for them to make that decision. And I've seen, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but they've been taking kids out of families that have done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
That's where and then they keep kids in environments where these kids are being beaten and abused and horrific, and you got to get them the hell out of there. And then they don't do anything for that either. So it's, and then there's a lot of good people in the system as well.
We know Beverly Schaefer, the foremost critic of Child Protective Services, was almost certainly assassinated in Georgia. Her and her husband both. I mean, because she was one of the first ones that talked about. I wrote about this in Hidden History. Is that because these kids are, most of the time, something's going on there where they're not leading an ideal life. So they're from broken homes or troubled homes or something. That's where a lot of the child sex trafficking stops, because that's where they find those are the kids. You're not going to find them from wealthy homes where they're isolated. It's families like that where they get their
vulnerable. They
really are. Yes, and it's all tied into drugs, and they're trying to feed those neighborhoods with drugs. It's a complicated problem, and it's not just one thing. But why the hell are we doubling the number of kids in the foster care system when the foster care system isn't that great either? I mean, there are gems.
It really is broken.
Yeah, everybody who's been part of it knows there's problems. So why would you double it? Why don't we just get more laser focused? It's sad. And so you listen to people like this, and he says, well, I don't want to take, I mean, there are cases where, there are a lot of cases where that child definitely needs to be out of that home, but there's even more where they shouldn't be. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
And kids want to be with their family. I've had many kids come to me who were horribly abused, and it's interesting. They still miss their family.
I know.
Really a tough thing to do. But I can say in the right home. Yeah. In the right home, they do thrive, and they understand, they know what it's like to count on someone. Their whole thinking changes. I mean, I remember being with my kids that I've adopted, and we were in a car, and they came from a highly criminal and drug addicted home, and they're like, oh my God, it's the cops, hide everybody, pull over, mom. They already called me mom. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, guys. I don't know where you picked this up from, but cops are on our side. We don't have to hide from them and duck from them, and then you run out of food and they think it's the end of the world, so they're hiding food under their beds. And it took a while for them to understand that we could just go to the store and get more. And a lot of them never had a Christmas and celebrated a birthday. And, it seems to be drug addicted homes and, but usually drug addiction with neglect, and then mental illness. There are parents who are mentally ill and incapable of taking care of kids.
But then that's even an abuse as well, right?
Yep.
That borders on abuse at that point. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's just a mess, and there's too many that are very loving. He ran into a lot of different people that are loving parents who are getting their kids taken away.
I know. I hear that over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
They need resources. They just need resources.
Yes. So those are the problems. There's so much more corruption. I mean, I could go on and on, but those are the big ones that are really affecting us. The human trafficking, of course, because it's tied to the blackmail system, and the blackmail system is very extreme, and our law enforcement has been being told to stand down. They're not going after it. And what's worse is a lot of the charities, the ones that you come to trust, are fronts to protect the actual networks. And that's really hard. It's a mind F, if you will, because they seem so good, but they're the actual problem. And that's
That's
so hard for them.
true.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's so
I've done.
hard for the public.
Mhm. I've gone into deep investigations. It is just unbelievable their tactics. Like I sit there, and then this animal, like a animal abuse or animal rescue, and they show all these beaten, abused animals, and you go and you research them, and like 5% of the money is actually going to shelters. It's just, and it just tugs at your heart. And I see that with children, and there, so many of them are corrupt. Besides the what's going on with children and the trafficking and everything else, it's just corrupt in general.
What did you hear the latest that Biden had a
Yeah,
cancer?
I was going to say that. Yeah,
He had a what?
What a
oh yeah, a
loser.
cancer charity that, but and almost nothing went to it. But Sarah, that's I wrote about that in the history. All the big charities are like that. I mean, the Bono's One Foundation gives barely 1% to actual causes. Sting's rainforest thing, of course, United Way, American
It's
Cancer
just
Society.
that's so sad.
Yeah,
You
don't
gotta
give to
that
any of those
that
charities.
no.
They're
Number
horrible.
one, look and see who's giving a
Yes,
decent percentage. 80% or
yes,
more needs to go to the actual
yes,
charity. Yeah,
yes.
Biden had a cancer charity fund, and not a dollar actually went to cancer. All
Yes.
went to salaries. That's the person that they think they
Wow.
is so great.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Wow.
80% or more needs to be going to that charity. And if it's not,
Salvation Army is a good one. That's the only big one that I know is good. They pay their CEO, I think, $14,000 a year the last time I checked. So
Oh,
oh my
uh,
that's
God.
good.
Well,
we
I would
we
be
always
okay
get
with
to
them
something.
paying a little more.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's
You can
well,
pay him a little more.
well, because what I'm sure that CEO is like, because most of the time, and he's like Elizabeth Dole was the head
Oh,
of United
yeah.
American Red Cross and was criticized for taking an outrageous salary,
Oh,
and
yes.
but it's ridiculous because it's usually people like that. They're a figurehead to they can say that Elizabeth Dole's the president or something, and they think people will give it more to it. But so whoever that CEO of the Salvation Army is probably kind of a philanthropist, and he's just doing it.
Well,
You
that
know,
makes sense.
yeah,
I'm
it
a
makes
retired
sense.
executive and I want to do something and give
Yes,
back. And
yes,
I don't
yeah,
need, just pay my expenses,
yes. You're good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's what it should be. But so, how do you see? Because I want to make sure we get this. Do you predict? I mean, I can't possibly predict how this. I don't think there is a good resolution here because if somehow Trump prevails in the courts or however, and they turn the election, they flip it back to him when all the other side thinks Biden's the president. I mean, I would think it's going to be a whole lot worse in the streets
Well,
than we
the
see.
worst,
You
yeah,
know?
I think it is going to be worse. And I think the truth has to win out. You have to do what's right
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
because I think not doing what's right is going to destroy our country even worse in the long run.
Right.
But the problem is the media's in on this game, and the media is very corrupt, and so
Yeah.
they're fueling this thing. Antifa isn't what people think it is. That a lot of these people are CIA backed. They're Al Qaeda was part of this group. I mean, it's a group that's a worldwide group, and they take people who are mentally unstable. They take people who are what do you call it, criminals, and they train them, and that's who Antifa is. A lot of them are, and so
Ah,
they're bad guys, and they're using them to destabilize our country. So people need to understand, and our media. I don't know why they're at some point our media needs to be shut down or taken over for being treasonous.
mm-hmm.
They're traitors, and that needs to be done.
Force them
They
to investigate things. Will you do your job?
well, but they're more
I
than
know, right?
but there has to
I
be
hear,
Yeah.
I
there
hear.
has to be there,
Go,
there has to be something more to this because they're flat out traitors. They're arms of the CIA intelligence.
Yes.
They're not just media personalities.
right. Mm-hmm.
So it's more serious than just the media. They're in arms of the intelligence agency and their official propaganda networks on
Mockingbird Media.
purpose. Yeah, you covered that. You know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Well, have
Yeah.
you talked to any of the other people that were banning? I think
Oh,
you're
yeah.
friends with Sean and Dustin and
We're in a lawsuit.
Red Pill. Oh, okay. Are you part of the Stop Bit Burning campaign? Because
Oh,
I've been involved with
no, no,
that.
no. It's not part of Stop Bit Burning. It's
Oh,
another we did a lawsuit and we initiated it with Chris Argenta. Is her law firm, Argenta and Saul. And we already are taking it to court. There's 15 of us that went in on it. And we're working with Zach Voorhees, who is the whistleblower from Google.
Yes.
Yeah, and I interviewed him, and me and Sean both interviewed him that day, and we started kicked off the fundraising. We raised $130,000 within like a couple days to pay for our first phase, and we know we're going to lose because we're taking them in the Bay Area at first. And my God, we knew it was going to be biased, but we didn't know it was going to be that biased. I mean, it was like the judge was their attorney. It is incredible. She had to do like gymnastics to figure out how to contour the whole case for them. They did not want to touch Section 230, which we want to touch. And so we were going to go back at it. We're not stopping until we either win or go to the Supreme Court. This is wrong. This is First Amendment issues.
You need to contact Lynn Wood. He never loses. Lynn Wood is the guy to do it. Nicholas Salmon's attorney. That's the guy.
Yeah.
Perry Mason.
This Chris, she's very familiar with the social media giants and them. And we also have some good people working with us who are very knowledgeable about district level court and Supreme Court level. So we're taking it differently, but
we're running out of time, but I want to make sure you can promote yourself, tell people where to find you and everything.
Because your information is really important, and I think people need to give it a listen. People need to stay in the loop, listen to alternative news, credible ones, because we all know there's a lot of nonsense out there. So go ahead, plug away, please.
Well, yeah, go to sarahwestall.com and sign up for my newsletter. I'm on all different platforms, but my newsletter is where you're going to get my information. Also, you can support me on Patreon, or you can join sarahwestall.tv, where you can subscribe and get my shows on Roku and Apple TV and Google TV. And I have a lot of exclusives as well for both my Patreon subscribers and for my subscribers of sarahwestall.tv. But my newsletter is kind of the best because that's where you get notification of everything that I'm working on. Because I not only do shows, but I've also been writing articles as well here and there when I get passionate about an issue, and I'll write up an article and then I'll do a show on it. So
can you subscribe from your website? Because I'm going to subscribe right after this.
Yeah, you can subscribe to my newsletter. You can subscribe to everything. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sarah Westall.
Thank you, Sarah.